Look at my wife, Jamal slurred from Chicago's glittering rooftop, arm around Lena, voice drowning jazz. That stupid black woman lounging at home, dreaming nonsense, leeching my success, knows nothing but spending. 50 froze. Zuri's mahogany skin burned under hazel-stung eyes, pink gown cracking like armor. Principal Hayes advanced. Jamal, who funds our school? Zuri, she's wealthy. Her Apex Innovations owns 70% EdTech stake, millions for labs, and scholarships. Your salary? Her grants. Gasps, phones lit. Jamal paled. Zuri smiled icily. Exactly, darling. I'm rich and free. What buried secrets for love? Vengeance or unbreakable empire? Her rise awaits. In the quiet hush of her home office, tucked away in the sun-dappled corner of their Chicago high-rise, Zuri's fingers danced across the keyboard like whispers on silk. The glow of dual monitors bathed her mahogany skin in a soft azure light, turning the fine sheen of her arms into something almost ethereal, as if the code she wove was pulling stars from the ether. Her hazel eyes, sharp as cut citrine, narrowed in fierce concentration, tracing lines of elegant script that promised to reshape classrooms across the city. Apex Innovations, her unspoken empire, birthed from late-night epiphanies and relentless grit, hummed beneath her touch. This latest update, a sleek app threading personalized learning paths for underserved kids, had just inked deals worth $50 million with Ivy League feeders and urban charters alike. But Zuri felt no swell of triumph, only the steady rhythm of purpose, like a heartbeat she'd long learned to muffle. She leaned back, the ergonomic chair sighing under her, and let her gaze drift to the window. Lake Michigan sprawled beyond, a vast indigo mirror under the midday sun, waves lapping at Navy Pier like secrets too vast to hold. It was moments like this, code compiling in silent victory, that Zuri clung to, the uncelebrated pulse of her world. No fanfare, no boardroom toasts, just her, the machine, and the quiet thrill of bending possibility to her will. A smile tugged at her full lips, warm and private, as the compiler chimed its approval. Another bridge built, she thought, her chest loosening with that rare, unguarded warmth. For kids like the ones she'd once been, daubed in the margins of underfunded schools, dreaming of circuits and stars, this was her rebellion, coded in compassion. But the warmth flickered when she heard the front door click open, the familiar jangle of keys hitting the bowl like a punctuation mark on her solitude. Jamal, her husband of 5 years, the man whose laughter had once unraveled her defenses like a glitch in the matrix. Zuri's heart quickened, not with the old electric surge, but with a tender anticipation laced with something sharper now. Anticipation edged by the subtle ache of unspoken truths. She saved her work, fingers lingering on the keys as if reluctant to release the reins of her domain, then rose, smoothing her simple cotton blouse over jeans worn soft from endless nights at the desk. He appeared in the doorway, tie loosened like a flag of surrender after a long day, his short brown hair tousled from raking fingers through it. Jamal's face, pale and boyish even at 32, split into that grin, the one that had hooked her from across a crowded conference hall years ago. "Hey, beautiful," he said, voice rich with the Midwestern lilt that still sent a shiver down her spine. He crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling her into an embrace that smelled of chalk dust and faint cologne, his arms wrapping around her waist with the easy possessiveness of habit. Zuri melted into it, her cheek against his shoulder, inhaling the scent that whispered home. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to this, his steady breath, her pulse syncing with his, the illusion of unbreakable harmony. As they parted, Jamal's blue eyes sparkled with that post-victory gleam. "You won't believe the day I had," he launched in, already pacing the room with animated energy, hands gesturing like a conductor summoning symphonies. "Third period, right? Little Jamal, ironic, huh? That kid who's been zoning out all semester? I hit him with this interactive history sim I rigged up on the projector. Boom. Eyes wide, questions flying. The whole class lit up like fireworks. Principal Hayes pulled me aside after, Says I'm a shoe-in for that department head spot next term. 90K, baby. We're talking real stability. Zuri's smile widened, genuine and radiant, her hazel eyes crinkling at the corners. Pride bloomed in her chest, fierce and unyielding, like the first successful debug after hours of frustration. She loved this about him, the fire, the unfiltered joy in small triumphs, the way his passion for those kids mirrored her own hidden crusade. That's incredible, Jamal, she murmured, stepping closer to cup his face, thumbs brushing the faint stubble along his jaw. His skin was warm, flushed with the rush of the wind, and for a moment she saw the man she'd fallen for. Ambitious, alive, a beacon in the dim halls of public education. You deserve it. Those kids, they're lucky to have you lighting that spark. Tell me more. What's him? How'd you tweak it? But Jamal waved it off with a chuckle, already turning toward the kitchen, his momentum unbroken. Oh, just some basic branching narratives on the Civil War. Nothing too techy like your wizardry. He paused at the fridge, cracking open a beer with a hiss that cut the air too sharply. The foam bubbled over, mirroring the subtle effervescence fading in Zuri's chest. She followed him, leaning against the counter, her fingers tracing absent patterns on the cool granite. Patterns like the algorithms she'd just perfected. Speaking of, she ventured, voice soft but laced with that quiet excitement she reserved for him, I wrapped the equity module today. It's game-changing. Adaptive algorithms that flag bias in grading patterns, then suggest reroutes for at-risk students. Could cut dropout rates by 20% in under-resourced districts. I even mocked up a pilot for your school. Hayes could greenlight it tomorrow if... Jamal took a long pull from the bottle, nodding absently as he scrolled his phone, the screen's glow casting shadows on his face. Sounds solid, Z. Real brainiac stuff. His tone was light, appreciative in that offhand way, but it landed like a skipped line in her code. Jarring, incomplete. He didn't look up, didn't probe deeper into the architecture she'd slaved over, the nights she'd traded sleep for syntax errors. Zuri's throat tightened, a familiar pang twisting low in her gut. Not now, she chided herself, forcing the warmth back into her smile. This was his moment, his high. She learned to time her shares like a buffer overflow, careful, contained. Instead, she sidled up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist, chin resting on his shoulder. I'm proud of you, she whispered, pressing a kiss to the nape of his neck, tasting salt and success. Jamal leaned back into her, his free hand covering hers, squeezing with a tenderness that eased the knot. Couldn't do it without you, babe, keeping the home fires burning. His words wrapped around her like a blanket, cozy and confining all at once. Zuri nodded against him, swallowing the echo of her own fire dimming. She was the architect of their life, the anonymous benefactor who'd funneled 50 grand a year into his master's tuition without a whisper of credit, who'd co-signed the sleek SUV gleaming in the garage below, who'd fronted the down payment on this Lakeview perch so he could feel like the provider, the rock. Every transfer from her Apex accounts to their joint one was a deliberate veil, a gift of ego she wrapped in love. Let him shine, she'd told herself 1,000 times, the mantra a shield against the growing silence around her wins. Marriage was partnership, after all, his light, her shadow, intertwined. They moved to the couch as dusk bled orange across the water, Jamal recounting the day's heroics with vivid strokes, the student's breakthrough gasp, the colleague's envious nod, the principal's pat on the back. Zuri listened, her laughter genuine, her touches lingering, fingers interlacing with his, head on his shoulder. Each story pulled at her heartstrings, a reminder of why she'd chosen this man. His unyielding belief in second chances, his voice cracking with passion over a lesson's arc. But as the tales looped back to his ascent, the raise, the title, the respect, Zuri felt the subtle shift, like a variable slipping scope. Her app, her empire, hovered unspoken, a ghost in the room. When he finally paused for breath, eyes distant with replayed glory, Zuri tilted her head, searching his profile. Jamal? Her voice was a thread, tentative yet hopeful. He turned, brow quirking. Yeah? She hesitated, the words bubbling up like overflow data. That module I mentioned, it's not just code, it's for kids like us, bridge builders in broken systems. Imagine it in your classroom. Her hazel eyes held his, pleading for the spark of curiosity she'd once ignited in him. Jamal's smile softened, but it didn't reach his eyes. He squeezed her hand, pulling her closer. You're amazing, Zuri. Truly. But hey, let's celebrate mine tonight. Pizza from Gino's? My treat. He kissed her forehead, quick and affectionate, then rose to order, phone already in hand. Zuri sank back, the cushion yielding like defeat. The lake outside darkened, mirroring the quiet storm in her chest, a swirl of love tangled with loss, pride pierced by invisibility. She traced the engagement ring on her finger, its diamond catching the last light, a promise etched in facets. For him, she breathed, the ache blooming into resolve. But as Jamal's laughter echoed from the kitchen, bantering with the delivery guy, a whisper of doubt crept in. How long could she code in the shadows before the program crashed? The doorbell buzzed, shattering the moment. Jamal bounded over, swinging the door wide to reveal steaming boxes and the scent of melted cheese. Feast time, he crowed, plating slices with boyish enthusiasm. Zuri joined him at the table, forcing levity into her laugh as they clinked bottles. Under the table, her foot hooked his ankle, a silent tether, a plea for connection. He grinned, oblivious, diving into another anecdote about a star pupil. As the night deepened, Zuri savored the normalcy, the easy rhythm of their shared space. But when he pulled her to bed later, his kisses fervent and familiar, she arched into him with a desperation she couldn't name, clinging to the man who'd vowed forever by the lake's edge, under a sky stitched with possibility. In the afterglow, tangled in sheets, Jamal murmured sleepily, "Love you, Z. You're my anchor." Her heart clenched, tears pricking unbidden. Anchor, she echoed silently, staring at the ceiling's shadows. Not the architect, not the force, just the steady weight holding him afloat. She turned to him, tracing his sleeping face, the love still fierce but fraying at the edges. Tomorrow she'd dive back into code, building bridges no one saw. For now, in the velvet dark, Zuri held the ache close, a fragile ember she refused to let die. Zuri woke to the first blush of dawn filtering through the blinds, casting slatted gold across the rumpled sheets. Jamal's side was empty, the pillow dented but cooling, his absence a quiet void that echoed louder than any alarm. She stretched, muscles protesting the night's tangled fervor, and reached for her phone on the nightstand, a ritual as ingrained as breathing. Notifications flickered. A congratulatory email from her lead developer on the equity module's beta success. A donor alert confirming another wire transfer to Apex's scholarship fund. Triumphs stacked like unopened gifts, each one a spark she hoarded in the dark corners of her mind. Downstairs, the clatter of cabinets pulled her from bed. She padded barefoot across the hardwood, the cool floor grounding her wandering thoughts, and found Jamal in the kitchen, humming off-key to some classic rock tune on the radio. His back was to her, broad shoulders flexing under a faded college tee as he poured coffee, steam curling like unspoken questions. Zuri paused in the doorway, heart swelling with that familiar cocktail of affection and fragility. Love, yes, but laced with the subtle erosion of self she'd begun to sense, like code compiling with hidden bugs. "Morning, handsome," she murmured, slipping behind him to wrap her arms around his waist, chin hooking over his shoulder. His scent, soap and sleep, enveloped her, a balm against the night's residue. Jamal turned his head, planting a quick kiss on her temple, his stubble grazing her skin like a promise half kept. "Morning, Z. Slept like the dead after that pizza coma." He chuckled, handing her a mug, the ceramic warm against her palms. Black, 2 sugars, just how she liked it. A small victory in the choreography of their mornings. They settled at the island, knees brushing under the quartz, and for a moment the world felt stitched back together. Zuri sipped, the bitterness grounding her, and watched him scroll through his lesson planner, brow furrowed in that endearing concentration she adored. As the sun climbed, spilling light across the lake view, Jamal's energy ignited again. "So, Hayes cornered me yesterday, wants me leading that new curriculum rollout for the district. Me, Zuri, front and center. His eyes lit with that boyish fire, hands animating the air as he described the pitch. Interactive modules on social justice, gamified debates that could revolutionize how these kids see themselves. Pride surged in Zuri's chest, hot and unfiltered. She saw the ripple effect, the way his passion could echo her own coded bridges, amplifying voices long silenced. That's huge, she breathed, leaning forward, her hazel eyes locking on his with genuine fervor. You're changing lives in there, Jamal. Not just teaching facts, igniting them. What if we synced it with my app? The adaptive paths could tailor those modules per student, flag cultural blind spots before they hit. Her voice quickened, words tumbling like lines of eager script, envisioning the fusion. His classroom alchemy meeting her digital forge, a hybrid potent enough to rewrite futures. Jamal's nod was quick, almost mechanical, as he drained his mug. Yeah, cool idea. But let's keep it simple. I've got enough on my plate without layering in tech bells and whistles. He rose, rinsing his cup with a clatter that jarred the air, his back to her again. Zuri's smile faltered, the enthusiasm curdling into a quiet sting, like a variable undefined. She stared at the steam rising from her coffee, swirling patterns that mocked her unraveling poise. Simple, she echoed inwardly, the word lodging like grit in her throat. Her bells and whistles had bankrolled his masters, patted their nest egg until it brimmed. Yet here she was, pitching collaboration like a supplicant at her own table. She swallowed the retort, forcing levity as she joined him at the sink. Fair enough, you're the maestro. Her hand grazed his arm, seeking reconnection, and he turned, pulling her into a loose hug, his laugh rumbling against her ear. Damn right. And you're my muse, holding down the fort while I conquer the world. The words landed soft, affectionate, but they twisted in her gut, a velvet noose tightening. Fort, not empire, not the labyrinth of servers humming in hidden data centers, nor the board she'd quietly assembled from Silicon Valley shadows. Just the hearth she'd stoked with invisible fuel. The day unfolded in its familiar cadence. Jamal off to school with a lingering kiss and a love you, the door clicking shut like a period on their interlude. Zuri retreated to her office, the monitors welcoming her back with open arms. Hours blurred into a frenzy of refinement, tweaking algorithms until they sang, fielding encrypted calls from partners who treated her like the oracle she was. Each breakthrough sent a thrill racing through her veins, electric and alive, her laughter echoing off the walls in solitary celebration. But as afternoon waned, the high ebbed, replaced by that creeping hollowness. She fired off a text to Jamal. Nailed the pilot demo. Thoughts? Minutes ticked by, then his reply. Awesome. Busy WeWAS parent conf. Home late. Zuri set the phone down, the screen's glow fading like her spark. She wandered to the living room, sinking into the couch with a glass of red, the wine's tart bite mirroring her mood. The apartment, their sanctuary, bought with her first big exit payout, felt vast and echoing, walls adorned with his framed teaching awards, photos of their lakefront vows where her smile hid the weight of what she'd surrendered. She traced the edge of a frame, finger lingering on their intertwined hands, the memory surfacing unbidden. That conference 6 years back, Jamal's awestruck gaze across the hall as she demoed her prototype. You're a revolution, he'd whispered later, over cheap wine and stolen glances, building worlds no one's even dreamed. Back then, he'd devoured her stories, eyes wide as she unpacked neural nets and equity metrics, his questions a lifeline pulling her from isolation. Now, the shift had crept in like fog off the lake. Subtle at first after his promotion, the raise had inflated him, his tales dominating dinners, her contributions, footnotes dismissed with a pat. That's my girl. Last week's dinner with his buddies replayed in her mind, uninvited and sharp. The guys, pale faces flushed with beer, slapping Jamal's back over his big break, had turned to her with polite curiosity. So, Zuri, what's keeping you busy these days? One asked, genuine spark in his eye. Jamal had jumped in before she could, arm slung casual over her chair. Oh, she's the domestic goddess, whipping up magic in the kitchen, tinkering with some hobby coding on the side. Keeps her out of trouble while I grind. Laughter rippled, good-natured but slicing, his wave of hand brushing her world aside like lint. Zuri had forced a chuckle, cheeks burning under the table's gaze, her retort dying on her tongue. Hobby, the app that had just secured a district-wide rollout, the one funding their mortgage like clockwork, a pastime apparently next to his real grind. She'd excused herself to the kitchen then, gripping the counter until her knuckles ached, tears hot and traitorous. For love, she'd whispered to the empty room, the mantra cracking under strain. Marriage wasn't ledger-keeping, it was grace, sacrifice, the art of letting him eclipse without resentment. But the grace was thinning, each slight a chip in the foundation, widening fissures she patched with silence. The front door rattled her from reverie. Jamal, home later than promised, tie askew and eyes weary, but alight. Rough one, he groaned, dropping his bag with a thud that vibrated through the floor. Zuri rose, crossing to him, hands framing his face as she searched for the man beneath the fatigue. Tell me, she urged, guiding him to the couch, her touch a plea for reciprocity. He sank down, pulling her onto his lap, the weight of him grounding yet heavy. Parents tearing into the system. Why can't you fix my kid? Like I'm Superman. His rant poured out, laced with frustration and fire, the injustice fueling him as it did her. Zuri nodded, murmuring affirmations, her fingers threading through his hair. Soft, therapeutic strokes that eased his tension. But when the tide turned, her turn to share the day's code conquest bubbling up, Jamal's phone buzzed, shattering the flow. He glanced at it, then silenced it with a sigh. Sorry, babe. Gotta prep for tomorrow's assembly. Rain check on the deep dive? He kissed her, deep and distracting, his hands wandering with that familiar hunger. Zuri yielded, body responding, even as her mind recoiled, the intimacy a bandage over the growing rift. In the dim lamplight, as they moved together, she chased the illusion of unity, whispering his name like a debug command. But release brought no clarity, only the hollow echo of her unspoken empire, fading into the night. Later curled against him in the dark, Zuri listened to his even breaths, the lake's distant murmur, a lullaby of unrest. Her journal lay on the nightstand, pages filling with scrawled confessions. He doesn't see me anymore. Or maybe I hid too well. The words blurred through unshed tears, a catharsis she dared not voice. Love demanded compromise, she knew. Her light dimmed so his could blaze. Yet as sleep claimed her, the fissures whispered warnings, cracks spiderwebbing towards something irrevocable. The next morning brought no mending. Over breakfast, hers hurried, his lingering, Jamal's phone chimed again, a group text lighting his face. Bunch of us hitting O'Malley's after work, he said, casual as stirring sugar. You cool solo tonight? Zuri's fork paused midair, the eggs turning leaden. Always am. The words tasted bitter, but she smiled, masking the pang with a shrug. He leaned over, kissing her cheek, perfunctory parting, before dashing out with a catch you later. Alone again, Zuri cleared the plates with mechanical precision, the clink of china a metronome to her mounting resolve. She returned to her screens, diving into work with renewed ferocity, each keystroke a defiance. But as evening fell, the apartment's silence pressed in, heavy as unsent code. Her phone buzzed, not Jamal, but a forwarded invite from his thread, snagged by accident. Rooftop bash for Mike's bidet, sat night. Bring the wife if she's not buried in her little projects. Beer's on me. Zuri stared at the screen, the words little projects searing like acid. Laughter bubbled up, sharp and unhinged, dissolving into a sob she muffled against her sleeve. The party, a glittering trap perhaps, but also a mirror. She wiped her eyes, resolve hardening like compiled steel. Let him see, she thought, the ember flaring, not the shadow but the storm. Saturday loomed, a precipice veiled in stars. The text lingered on Zuri's screen like a scar, the casual cruelty of little projects burrowing deeper with each reread. She set the phone face down on the nightstand, the wood's grain blurring under her fingertips as resolve coiled tight in her belly. a serpent awakening, scales glinting with quiet fury. Saturday, the rooftop bash. Not a cage, but a coliseum. Jamal slept beside her, chest rising in oblivious rhythm, his face softened by dreams she no longer shared. Zuri turned away, hazel eyes fixed on the moon's silver slash across the ceiling, her mind already sketching the armor she'd don. Not shadows, but revelation, sharp as shattered glass. Dawn broke with a vengeance, sunlight spearing through the curtains like accusations. Zuri rose before the alarm, her body humming with purpose, every nerve alight as she moved through the morning's rituals. Coffee brewed strong and black, its aroma a war drum in the quiet kitchen, fueling the fire she'd banked too long. She showered under scalding water, letting the steam scour away the night's doubts, droplets tracing rivulets down her mahogany skin like tears she refused to shed. Emerging, she wrapped herself in a silk robe, the fabric whispering against her as she faced the full-length mirror in their bedroom, a relic from their honeymoon, when reflections held only promise. Today it held strategy. Zuri's reflection stared back, fierce and unyielding, full lips set in determination, hazel eyes storm-clouded with the weight of unspoken empires. She reached for the garment bag hanging in the closet, the zipper's rasp a prelude to transformation. The dress unfurled like a banner of defiance, pink chiffon, backless and bold, cupping her curves with unapologetic grace, the hue a blush of dawn against her skin. $500 from that Gold Coast boutique, chosen not for allure, but for the way it screamed scene, the open back of vulnerability turned weapon, exposing the strength etched in her spine. She slipped it on, the fabric cool and clinging, then summoned her stylist via app. A quick house call, scissors and heat tools arriving like summoned allies. As the woman worked, weaving Zuri's thick coils into straight, silken sheets that cascaded like midnight rivers down her back, conversation flowed light and evasive. "Big night?" the stylist probed, comb snagging a knot. Zuri met her eyes in the mirror, a half-smile curving her lips. Pivotal. No more. Words were currency she doled sparingly now. Each one weighed against the risk of dilution. The stylist nodded, understanding in the tilt of her head, and finished with a spritz of oil that caught the light, turning each strand to polished obsidian. Makeup followed. Eyeliner winged sharp as her resolve. Lips stained a nude that amplified rather than obscured. Cheeks dusted to glow without apology. Zuri stepped back, appraising the whole. The dress's plunge framing her collarbone like a challenge. Hair a glossy veil framing her face. Not vanity, but vestment. For him to witness, she thought, pulse thrumming low and insistent. For me to remember. Jamal stirred as she moved about the room, his groan muffled by pillow. "What time is it?" he mumbled, squinting against the light, blue eyes bleary with weekend laziness. Zuri turned, the dress whispering with her pivot, and watched realization dawn, his gaze tracing the lines of her, widening from sleep fog to something appreciative, hungry. "Whoa, Z! Going for blood tonight?" He sat up, sheets pooling at his waist, that grin flashing like a flare. Charming, disarming, the one that had once melted her reservations. She arched a brow, hazel eyes locking on his with playful steel. "Just dressing for the occasion. Mike's bash. Don't want to embarrass the department head." The tease landed light, but beneath it pulsed the undercurrent, a test of waters grown murky. Jamal laughed, swinging his legs over the bed's edge, padding over in boxers to circle her, hands skimming her hips. "Embarrass me? In that? You're lethal." His touch lingered, warm and possessive, igniting a flicker in her core. Desire tangled with desperation, the ache for the man who'd once seen her as equal flame. He kissed her shoulder, breath hot against exposed skin. "Though fair warning, Hayes might be there. Gotta play it cool. No shop talk from the little woman." The words slipped out casually, a jest wrapped in habit, but they landed like frostbite, numbing the warmth his proximity stirred. Little woman. Zuri's jaw tightened imperceptibly, her reflection in the mirror catching the flash of hurt before she schooled it to silk. She turned in his arms, fingers trailing his chest, voice honeyed with restraint. Wouldn't dream of it. This is your night. Lies, sweet and sacrificial, the kind she'd spun into their shared narrative. Jamal bought it, pulling her close for a deeper kiss, his hands roaming the dress's edges as if claiming territory. She yielded, body arching into the familiar map of him, chasing the ghost of connection amid the growing chasm. But as he broke away, whistling low, the thrill soured to sorrow. Love's ledger unbalanced, her contributions footnotes in his biography. The afternoon dragged in fits of preparation, Zuri's phone a silent sentinel on the vanity. She reviewed Apex briefs and stolen moments, the encrypted files a lifeline to her unseen realm. Scholarship disbursements cleared, a new investor nibbled on the equity module. Triumphs that should have sparked joy now tasted of isolation, each win a solitary echo in the vault of her silence. Jamal vanished into the shower, emerging in chinos and a crisp button-down, towel drying his brown hair with boyish nonchalance. His phone buzzed incessantly. Text from the crew, a call he took in the hall, voice dropping to conspiratorial lows. Zuri caught fragments. Yeah, Lena's heading up early. Tell her I'll save a spot. Laughter followed, easy and intimate, the kind that once belonged to them. By evening, the air thickened with anticipation, the city beyond their windows pulsing with Friday's fever. Jamal paced the living room, checking his watch, phone glued to his ear again. Lena? Yeah, running late. Traffic's a beast. Save me a high noon? His tone was light, laced with that effortless rapport, the one that made Zuri's stomach twist. Not jealousy outright, but a hollow recognition of spaces she'd ceded. She slipped on her heels, strappy black numbers that elongated her legs like arrows aimed true, and caught her reflection once more. Poised, powerful, a queen in waiting. Let them underestimate, she breathed, the mantra stealing her spine. Ready? Jamal called, pocketing his keys, barely glancing up from his screen. Zuri emerged, the click of heels announcing her, like thunder's rumble. He paused then, eyes widening anew, a wolfish appreciation crossing his features. Damn, Zuri, you're turning heads before we even leave. The compliment warmed her, fleeting as sunlight on water, but she clung to it, stepping into his orbit for the obligatory twirl. All for you, she quipped, the lie tasting of ash. The drive unfolded in a strained symphony, the SUV's engine a low growl through Lincoln Park's veins, streetlights streaking past like shooting doubts. Jamal fiddled with the radio, settling on a classic R&B playlist, their old staple, Marvin Gaye crooning about troubleman hearts. Zuri gazed out the passenger window, the city's mosaic blurring into memory. That first picnic here, blankets spread under ancient oaks. Jamal feeding her strawberries with fingers stained red, his whispers of forever mingling with birdsong. You're my revolution, he'd said then, tracing her palm as if mapping constellations. Now the silence between tracks stretched taut, broken only by his sporadic commentary on the party. Mike's got the good stuff, craft IPAs that'll knock you flat. His excitement a solo aria, her contributions unbidden. She shifted, dress rustling softly and ventured a bridge. Excited to meet your crew properly. Been too long since I've heard your war stories firsthand. Her voice held hope, a lifeline tossed into the gap. Jamal glanced over, smile quick but distracted, hand squeezing her knee in absent affection. Yeah, they'll love you. Just keep it light, okay? These are education diehards. No need for the tech deep dive. The squeeze lingered, paternal almost, and Zuri's chest constricted, the hope curdling to quiet rage. Light. As if her depths were burdens to ballast. She nodded, turning back to the window, the lake's dark expanse mocking her with its indifference. Rain pattered suddenly against the glass, fat drops racing like escaped tears, blurring the world to watercolor regret. The rooftop lounge loomed at Journey's End, a crown atop a sleek Wrigleyville high-rise, string lights twinkling like false stars against the bruised sky. Valet took the keys with a nod, and Jamal alighted first, extending a hand that Zuri took with feigned grace, her heels sinking slightly into the plush carpet of the elevator ascent. The doors parted to a symphony of revelry, jazz horns wailing sultry over bass thrum, laughter cascading like champagne foam, the air thick with citrus cologne and grilled skewers from past trays. Skyline sprawled below, Chicago's electric veins pulsing in deference, while above umbrellas sheltered clusters from the drizzle's spite. Jamal's stride lengthened, magnetic in his element, pulling her along like an afterthought. "There's the gang," he murmured, zeroing on a knot of faces near the bar. 5 or 6, pale skins flushed with early pores, ties askew in Friday's truce. Zuri followed a step behind, the dress's hem brushing her calves like a whisper of warning, her heart a drumbeat quickening with each separation. He plunged in, back slaps and bro hugs erupting, then turned, arm looping her waist in a proprietary flourish. "Guys, this is my wife," he announced, the word flat as a footnote. No name, no flourish. Just appendage to his throne. Polite smiles bloomed, hands extended in cool appraisal. "Hey, great to meet. Jamal's told us all about you." Zuri clasped them firmly, her grip a silent assertion, hazel eyes meeting each with warmth-laced steel. "Zuri," she supplied, voice steady as code, pleased to finally put faces to the legends. Laughter rippled, appreciative but surface, the conversation veering swiftly to shop, curriculum tweaks, budget woes, a shared groan over district red tape. Zuri leaned in, the jazz's sway urging her pulse, and tossed a gentle lob. "Sounds brutal. Ever thought of layering in adaptive tools? Could automate the admin grind, free up time for what matters, the kids." The circle paused, a beat of consideration, but Jamal's hand tightened on her hip. Subtle pressure, a cue unspoken. "Babe, grab us drinks. This is pro turf." His tone was light, jovial even, but it sliced clean, dismissing her like a pop-up ad. Heat flooded Zuri's cheeks, not from the wine she'd yet to taste, but from the raw exposure. The way his words stripped her bare, reducing architect to an accessory before strangers who'd never know her blueprint. She extricated with a nod, smile brittle as spun glass, murmuring, "On it," as she wove toward the bar, heels clicking defiance into the din. There, amid the clink of ice and murmur of orders, a figure detached from the shadows, Lena materializing like smoke from a flare. Blonde waves cascaded artful over an emerald sheath that hugged her lithe frame, green eyes sharp with the hunt, lips curved in perpetual invitation. She sidled up, scent of jasmine cutting the citrus fog, and leaned in with predatory poise. "You must be Zuri. Jamal's mentioned you." The words dripped sweet, but the gaze raked cool, appraising the pink dress like a rival's banner. Zuri met it unflinching, ordering a bourbon neat with a steady hand. "All good things, I hope." Lena's laugh tinkled, crystalline and cutting, as she signaled her own martini. Extra olives, extra edge. "Oh, absolutely, he's so proud. How you keep things running smoothly at home, while he saves the world one lesson at a time." The praise twisted barbed, implying idol over industry, and Zuri's grip whitened on the glass, the liquor burning neat down her throat like swallowed fire. From across the space, Jamal's laughter boomed anew, his form silhouetted against the rail, arm brushing Lena's empty spot. No, Lena's domain, where he'd lit like kindling to her spark. Zuri watched, bourbon pooling warmth in her veins, the isolation crashing in waves. Not just overlooked, but erased, a specter in her own skin. The rain intensified, drumming the awning like applause for her unraveling. She raised her glass to shadowed lips, the burn a vow. Soon, it whispered, they'll see. The bourbon slid down Zuri's throat like liquid fire, each swallow a deliberate ignition, fanning the embers of her resolve into something feral and unyielding. Lena's martini glass caught the string light's gleam, olives skewered like tiny impaled secrets as she leaned closer, her emerald dress shimmering with the insincerity of a siren's call. "Jamal's a force, isn't he?" Lena purred, green eyes flicking toward the group where Jamal held court, his laughter a thunderclap cutting through the jazz's languid wail. "That promotion? Deserved. Men are reshaping minds while the rest of us scramble. You must be so proud, holding the home front steady." Zuri's grip on her glass tightened, the cool condensation slick against her palm, mirroring the sweat beating at her nape despite the night's chill bite. Pride? The word twisted in her gut, a mockery wrapped in velvet, as if her role were mere spectator to his soliloquy. She forced a sip, the burn steadying her voice to silk over steel. Immensely. He's always had that gift, drawing light from the dark. Her hazel eyes held Lena's, unflinching, a subtle challenge veiled in civility. But beneath the isolation gnawed deeper, a hollow ache blooming where connection should thrive. Steady, she echoed inwardly, the mantra of fraying thread. This wasn't erasure. It was rehearsal for the reckoning she'd scripted in silent code. Lena's laugh tinkled again, sharp as shattering crystal, her hand brushing Zuri's arm in feigned camaraderie, a touch too lingering, too proprietary. Oh, honey, you're a saint. Most wives would crack under the pressure of his schedule. Me, I'd be lost without my girls' nights. The implication hung heavy, a barb dipped in honey. You're not one of us, the working warriors. You're the respite, the soft landing. Zuri's chest constricted, the dress's fabric suddenly constricting like a vice. The backless plunge a cruel irony, exposed yet unseen. She scanned the rooftop, rain sheeting the glass barriers and silver curtains, the city below a blurred labyrinth of lights that mocked her own veiled existence. Jamal's silhouette dominated the knot, gestures broad and commanding, his voice carrying snippets. And that's when I flipped the script on the whole unit. Applause, literal claps from his cronies, beers raised in salute. Her contribution earlier? Vaporized, unremembered. Emboldened by the liquor or the slight, Zuri straightened, her straight locks swaying like a dark cascade as she pivoted toward the group. "Excuse me," she murmured to Lena, who waved her off with a smirk that said, "Go on, play the part." Heels clicking a staccato rhythm over the teak decking, Zuri wove through the throng, bodies parting like code yielding to a command. Her heart a war drum pounding against ribs that felt too fragile. The jazz swelled, horns crying a mournful bend, underscoring the surreal detachment. She, the architect of algorithms that could predict a student's breakthrough from a single data point, reduced to outsider in her husband's orbit. She reached the circle's fringe, the men's faces turning, polite masks cracking into curiosity. Jamal's arm snaked around her waist instinctively, pulling her flush against his side, the gesture possessive yet absent, like draping a trophy on a shelf. "There she is," he boomed, voice amplified by the IPA's haze, his free hand gesturing with bottle in tow. "Took you long enough, saving me from these vultures." Laughter erupted, self-deprecating and warm, but Zuri felt the undercurrent, the way eyes skimmed her dress, her skin, her presence, like an exotic footnote to the main text. One of the guys, Mark, she recalled, the history buff with the perpetual 5 o'clock shadow, leaned in, beer foam clinging to his mustache. "So Zuri, Jamal says you're a whiz with computers. What's the latest gadget keeping you busy?" Genuine spark lit his query, a lifeline tossed amid the testosterone tide, and Zuri seized it, her pulse quickening with the thrill of visibility. "Actually, I've been deep in adaptive learning tools," she replied, voice gaining traction, hazel eyes alight as she leaned forward. "Imagine software that maps a kid's learning style in real time, spots gaps in equity, reroutes lessons before frustration sets in. Could slash admin by 30%? Let teachers like Jamal focus on the magic, sparking that aha moment." The circle hushed for a beat, nods rippling, Mark's eyes widening in respect, and another murmuring, "That's gold." Zuri's chest expanded, the ache ebbing to a glow, the dress's fabric whispering encouragement against her skin. For the first time tonight, she breathed unburdened, the rain's patter a distant applause to her unveiled spark. Jamal's hand on her hip loosened, then tightened, a subtle vice, his chuckle cutting the air like a glitch. "Whoa, babe, easy on the TED Talk. These guys are drowning in paperwork as is. No need to overload the circuits." His tone played for laughs, light as foam, but the edge sliced true, dismissing her depth as digital fluff. The group chuckled obligingly, the moment fracturing, her insight evaporating like mist under the string lights. Heat surged in Zuri's veins, not the bourbon's warmth, but a volcanic rush. Humiliation laced with fury, her cheeks flushing beneath mahogany glow. She turned to him, lips parting for retort, but his eyes met hers. Blue ice over warning, the silent, not here, not now. The plea in her throat died, swallowed by the old habit of concession, love's leash yanking her back. Right, she managed, voice a threadbare veil, excusing herself with a brittle smile. Drinks all around, on me. She slipped away again, the bar's refuge calling like a confessional, heels echoing her retreat over the deck's resonant hum. Lena materialized once more, martini refreshed, her proximity a velvet intrusion. Rough crowd, she cooed, sliding onto the stool beside Zuri, blonde waves brushing Zuri's arm like an unwanted caress. The bartender nodded at Zuri's wave, pouring neat again without question. Whiskey for the wounds unseen. Nah, Zuri lied, the liquor steadying her tremor. Just warming up. But Lena's gaze sharpened, predatory intuition gleaming. Jamal's in his element. Always has been. You know, we collab on those after-school programs. Late nights, brainstorming over takeout. He's brilliant, isn't he? The way he just commands. The words landed like shrapnel, each syllable embedding deeper. Collab. Late nights. Zuri's bourbon paused mid-sip, the glass cold against her lips, a storm brewing in her hazel depths. Not accusation, yet, but the implication festered, twisting pride to poison. She glanced back, Jamal, animated, hand gesturing wide as Lena's chair stood empty beside him, his laugh syncing with the group's roar. The sight clawed at her, his light borrowed from her shadows, now illuminating another stage. He does, Zuri conceded, voice even, but inside the serpent uncoiled fully, fangs bared. Commands. As if her commands, silent wires pulling strings across districts, were mere whimsy. The night spiraled from there, the jazz's tempo accelerating like her mounting dread, rain lashing the barriers in frantic sheets. Zuri nursed her drink, orbiting the edges, snippets of conversation drifting like smoke. Budget cuts, tenure tracks, Jamal's name invoked like a mantra. She inserted when pulled, smiles for toasts, nods for anecdotes, but each felt scripted, her essence diluted to echo. Lena returned to the fold, her laughter a siren song drawing Jamal's gaze, their heads bending close over shared whispers, his hand grazing her elbow in casual conspiracy. Zuri watched from afar, bourbon blurring the edges, the isolation crystallizing into crystalline pain. Love's betrayal not in infidelity, but indifference, her world orbiting his without gravity's pull. As the hour tipped toward midnight, the crowd thickened, bodies swaying to the horn's crescendo, IPAs flowing freer than truth. Jamal, flushed and emboldened, held the railing's edge, a captive audience of 8 hanging on his tails. War stories from the classroom front, triumphs laced with self-aggrandizing flair. Zuri approached tentatively, drawn by the magnetic hum, her glass empty now, heart heavy with an unspoken plea. Room for one more, she quipped, sliding into the loose circle, straight hair catching the light like a halo of resolve. Jamal's arm draped her shoulders, heavy with possession, his breath warm and beery against her ear. Always, babe, but save the text sermons. These folks need a break from the future. Laughter boomed, obligatory and oblivious, but Mark piped up, undeterred. Nah, I'm hooked. What's the equity angle you mentioned? Sounds like it could fix half our headaches. Zuri's spark reignited, fragile but fierce, words flowing like liberated code. It's about visibility, algorithms that detect systemic biases in real time, rerouting resources before kids slip through cracks. For schools like yours, it means personalized paths that honor every voice, every story. The group leaned in, murmurs of intrigue weaving through the rain's hush, her voice the thread binding them. For a suspended breath she shone, unveiled, vital, the architect stepping from shadow. But Jamal's chuckle shattered it, loud and liquid, his arm tightening like a cuff. Come on, Z, lighten up. Not everyone's wired for that wonk stuff. The dismissal cascaded, chuckles following like dominoes, the moment's warmth curdling to condescension. Lena tittered from his other side, hand on his forearm. She's adorable, always dreaming big while we grind the real dirt. The air thickened, jazz fading to a dirge in Zuri's ears, the rooftop spinning slowly as vertigo claimed her. Adorable. Dreaming. The words eviscerated, stripping her to caricature. The pretty prop, the black wife in pink, her intellect a quaint quirk. Humiliation surged, hot and tidal, crashing over pride's levees, tears pricking hot behind hazel lids. She blinked furiously away. The rain wept in sympathy, sheeting the world to blur. But the crowd's eyes pinned her, pitying, amused, complicit. Jamal, sensing the shift or fueled by the haze, swelled further, voice rising to command the hush. Let's be real, folks, he declared, bottle raised like a scepter, Lena's grip anchoring him. My wife's got it easy, lounging at home, fiddling with her little computer games, while I'm out there battling the system, breaking backs for breakthroughs. She's useless without my grind, that black woman just sponging off my wins, too dumb for the real world. The rooftop plummeted into the abyss. 50 souls stilled, breaths held in collective shock, the jazz a ghost wail over silence profound as a vacuum. Zuri froze, bourbon glass slipping from numb fingers to shatter on teak. Crystals scattering like her fracturing heart. The insult bloomed viciously, useless. Black woman. Dumb. Weapons forged from her skin, her silence, were hurled publicly as spectacle. Cheeks blazed, not flush but forge fire. Tears spilling traitor down mahogany trails. Chest caving under the weight of racial venom laced with intimate betrayal. Gasps rippled, eyes darting. Horror, discomfort, the white faces paling in complicit witness. Lena recoiled, hand withdrawing like scorched, her smirk curdling to unease. Zuri's world tunneled, the skyline a mocking blur. Rain's drum, the only heartbeat left. This, her mind screamed, the love she'd armored cracking wide, exposed not in triumph, but this, reduction to trope, to nothing, before strangers who'd never known her all. The serpent roared silently, fury and grief entwining, but her voice emerged whisper frail. Jamal, private? A plea, final and futile, the last thread of grace unraveling in the storm. He waved it off, eyes wild with the audience's thrall, oblivious to the chasm yawning. No filters tonight. Truth hurts, right? Laughter died unborn, the circle fracturing, bodies shifting awkwardly as the downpour intensified. Zuri stood adrift, pink gown sodden at hems, straight hair clinging like defeated banners, the abyss staring back unblinking. Love's ledger balanced in blood, her sacrifices, his supremacy, the cost a soul laid bare. In that suspended hell amid pity's gaze and rain's lament, Zuri felt the forge ignite, not destruction, but rebirth, the phoenix's first gasp in ashes of illusion. The shattered bourbon glass lay at Zuri's feet like the remnants of her illusions, shards glinting under the string light's merciless glare, each fragment a mirror to the devastation etched on her face. The rooftops hush deepened into a void, the jazz horns faltering to a discordant whine, drowned by the rain's relentless tattoo against the awning. A dirge for the marriage she'd armored with silence. 50 pairs of eyes bored into her, a tableau of frozen horror. White faces drained to ashen, mouths agape in collective recoil, the air thick with the acrid tang of spilled whiskey and unspoken complicity. Zuri's world narrowed to Jamal's flushed triumph, his blue eyes wild with the IPA's false bravado, oblivious to the chasm his words had carved. Useless, black woman, dumb. Each syllable a blade twisting in the marrow of her soul. Her chest heaved, breaths shallow and ragged, the pink chiffon clinging damp to her skin like a shroud soaked in betrayal. Tears carved hot paths down her cheeks, unchecked now, tracing the contours of her mahogany glow, pooling at the dress's neckline where vulnerability met exposure. The backless plunge, once a declaration of strength, now felt like flayed flesh, her spine bared to the storm's judgment. Rage and grief warred within, a tempest tearing at the seams of her composure. Rage for the man who'd vowed sanctuary by the lake, now wielding her race as a cudgel. Grief for the love she'd poured into shadows, invisible and unrequited. How? Her heart screamed, fracturing under the weight. How did we become this? Me, the fool in pink. You, the king of cruelty. The crowd's pity pressed like a shroud, their discomfort a secondary wound, amplifying the isolation. Not just unseen, but weaponized, her blackness a punchline in his spotlight. Jamal's grin faltered at the edges, the audience's recoil registering like a delayed buffer overflow, his bottle hovering midair as realization dawned. Babe, But the words choked, alcohol's haze cracking under the collective stare, his arm dropping from Lena's side like lead. Lena herself shrank back, emerald dress suddenly garish, her titter silenced to a gasp, green eyes darting as if seeking exit in the rain-lashed dark. The circle splintered further, bodies shifting in awkward eddies. Mark averting his gaze to the skyline, another muttering, Jesus, under breath. Leaving Zuri adrift in the epicenter, her straight locks plastered to shoulders that trembled with the effort of standing tall. She couldn't speak, couldn't move, the abyss yawning wider with each thud of her pulse. The rain wept harder, sheeting the barriers in silver veils that blurred the city to abstraction, mirroring the dissolution within. Vows evaporated, sacrifices scorched. The empire she'd built in secrecy now a phantom ache. Useless. The word echoed, venomous, resurrecting ghosts of boardrooms where she'd fought for scraps, of nights coding through doubt. Her blackness a barrier she'd coded around, not through. Here in this glittering cage it was flung back as failure. Her intellect, her wealth, her self-rendered null by the man who'd sworn to cherish. Sobs threatened, raw and unbidden, but Zuri clenched her jaw, nails digging crescents into palms, anchors against the tide. Not defeat, not yet. The serpent stirred anew, not in fury alone, but in the cold forge of clarity. This was the crash, the error forcing rewrite. From the periphery, a figure cleaved the hush, Principal Hayes emerging like a specter from the lounge's shadowed alcove, his salt and pepper beard framing a face carved from granite, vest gray as storm clouds. The crowd parted instinctively, umbrellas dipping in deference, as he advanced with measured strides, the teak decking creaking under his authority. At 60, Hayes carried the weight of decades in education's trenches, his blue eyes, faded but piercing, locking on Jamal with the precision of a debugger tracing faults. The air shifted, tension coiling tighter, the rain's drum a suspenseful underscore to his approach. Zuri watched, transfixed, her tears slowing to defiant tracks, the man's presence a sudden ballast in her spin. Jamal, Hayes intoned, voice gravel low, yet carrying like thunder over the din, each syllable weighted with the gravitas of boardrooms and budget battles. He halted between them, broad frame a bulwark, his gaze flicking to Zuri, not pity but recognition, a subtle nod that pierced her fog like a lifeline. Jamal straightened, bravado crumbling to unease, bottle lowering as sweat beaded anew on his brow. Sir, Hayes, I was just... Save it, Hayes cut, tone even but edged with iron, his eyes never leaving Jamal's. The crowd leaned in, a human amphitheater, phones forgotten in pockets as the drama eclipsed the night. Son, before you dig deeper, answer me this. Who bankrolls our district? Who pours the lifeblood into those labs, those scholarships, the very spine of what we do? His words hung, deliberate pauses amplifying the weight. The rain's hush, the only reply. Jamal blinked, confusion furrowing his pale features, the IPA's fog parting to bewilderment. The state board? Grants committee? A nervous chuckle escaped, dying unborn under Hayes's stare. Zuri's breath caught, a spark igniting in her chest, recognition dawning, the veiled threads of her influence tugging free. Hayes's lips thinned to a line, his hand rising slow, tablet materializing from his pocket like evidence in court. The screen ignited, casting his face in ethereal blue, illuminating the email chain. Her signature, elegant loops on disbursement approvals, wire transfers, millions scripted in black and white. Apex logos watermarking the docs that had greenlit the new STEM wing, the equity grants seeding Jamal's very programs. One benefactor, Hayes pressed, voice rising to fill the void, turning the tablet toward Jamal and the wrapped circle, like a prosecutor's exhibit. Zuri, her Apex Innovations owns 70% of our EdTech pipeline, funnels millions into the labs where your kids code their futures, the scholarships pulling them from the brink. That raise you crow about? That grind? It stems from her grants, her vision coded in the dead of night. The revelation landed seismic, gasps chaining through the crowd like dominoes toppling, phones resurfacing in frantic flurry, thumbs flying to search, Zuri Apex, Black Tech Billionaire Chicago, headlines blooming on screens like digital vindication. Jamal's face drained to parchment, blue eyes bulging in disbelief, the bottle slipping from slack fingers to clatter forgotten. No, Zuri, that's impossible. You're home all day, tinkering. Denial choked him, voice pitching high, a fish flailing on revelation's hook. Lena edged further, her form dissolving into the throng, emerald vanishing like smoke and wind. The rooftop pulsed with whispers now, a hive ignited. Holy shit, that's her? Wait, she funds us? Zuri stood unmoving, the storm within shifting, grief yielding to a glacial calm, tears drying to salt on her lashes. Power surged, not vengeful but clarifying, the weight of her unseen empire lifting like fog burned by dawn. See me now, her heart thundered, hazel eyes locking on Jamal's horror, the pink gown transforming from vulnerability to regalia. Hayes pivoted fully to her, deference in his stance, the nod deepening to bow. Mrs. Ellis, Zuri, your strategies have been our salvation. The adaptive tools, game changers, straight from your briefs. His words unlocked the floodgates. Murmurs swelled to awe, faces turning, Mark's wide-eyed respect, others' apologies unspoken in averted shame. Zuri drew breath, the air crisp with absolution, her voice emerging not shattered, but forged. Steady, resonant, laced with the ache of buried truths. I hit it, Jamal. For you. Paid your tuition, our home, every step of your climb. Funneled through shadows so you could stand tall. Feel the hero. Loved you enough to eclipse myself, to let your light blind mine. The confession hung, raw and radiant, her straight hair framing a face alight with unmasked fire. Jamal reeled, hand outstretched in supplication, voice cracking like brittle code. Zuri, why? If I'd known, I'd have treated you like... Horror twisted his features, the realization a mirror to his monstrosity. Respect conditional, love ledgered on wealth. Like what? Zuri interrupted, stepping forward, the shards crunching under heel, a symphony of breakage. Her tone iced over, hazel eyes boring into his, the crowd's hush her chorus. Like an equal? A partner? Not a prop? You used my skin as your punchline, my silence as your stage, called me dumb, useless before witnesses who'd spit on my name without your poison. But respect isn't a bonus for bankrolls. It's the baseline, the vow we broke by the lake. Tears welled anew, not weakness but wrath's overflow, her chest heaving with the purge. The rain eased to mist, veiling the skyline in mercy, but Zuri stood unbowed, the dress's plunge a testament to scars bared and survived. Jamal lunged, fingers grazing her arm, desperate, pleading. Babe, please, the booze, the heat, I didn't mean... But the words dissolved, his touch recoiling from the wall of her will. Zuri wrenched free, the motion fluid, final, her hand rising to the ring's band. 2 carats of promise, cold now against fevered skin. With deliberate grace, she twisted it free, the metal whispering adieu as it sailed to the bar top, landing with a crystalline ping that echoed like a gavel fall. We're done, she declared, voice carrying clear over the hush, each word a line of unerring code. Lawyers by morning, clean break, no shadows left. The rooftop exhaled, A collective release laced with reverence. Eyes on her, now not in pity, but power. Whispers shifting to wonder. She's the one. Holy billionaire. Jamal crumpled, knees buckling to the knees, sobs wrenching from his throat like a system failure. Zuri, no, God, forgive. But she turned, chin lifting regal, the mist crowning her like an aura. To Hayes, her gaze met steel to steel. Review his department, principal. Culture audit. Root out the rot. Hayes inclined. Respect etched deep. Files prepped at dawn, ma'am. The crowd parted as she moved, a phalanx yielding to the queen, heels charting path through shards and stairs. Jamal's wail chased. Zuri, wait! I'm sorry! But she didn't falter, the elevator's maw swallowing her whole, doors sealing the old life with a hydraulic sigh. In descent, alone in steel embrace, sobs broke free, cathartic, cleansing, the grief's full torrent mingling with triumph's spark. Freedom tasted of salt and storm, the city rising to meet her anew. Not broken but unbound, the phoenix, wings unfurling in the abyss's wake. The elevator's descent felt eternal, a steel coffin plummeting through Zuri's fractured reality. The mirrored walls reflecting her tear-streaked face in merciless multiplicity. A chorus of shattered queens, pink chiffon wilted like battle banners dragged through mud. The doors parted with a chime too cheerful for the wreckage within, spilling her into the lobby's sterile glow, where the concierge's polite, "Good evening, Mrs. Ellis," landed like shrapnel. She nodded numbly, heels echoing hollow over marble as she pushed through revolving glass into the night. Rain-slick streets hissing under tires, the city a blurred watercolor of neon regret. A taxi idled curbside. She slid in without grace. The doors slam a punctuation on the rooftop's carnage, her voice a rasp. Lake Shore. Fast. The driver glanced back, concern etching his brow at her sodden form, but she turned to the window, fogging glass with ragged breaths, the skyline receding like a dream-turned nightmare. In the cab's dim cocoon, the sobs broke free, deep, guttural heaves that racked her frame, shoulders shaking as if purging poison from veins. The dress clung clammy, a second skin of humiliation, the backless void now a chasm mirroring her exposure. Not just to Jamal's venom, but to the crowd's complicit stares, their white faces a gallery of silent judgments on her blackness wielded as weapon. Useless. The echo clawed, visceral, resurrecting specters of childhood taunts in underlit classrooms. Of venture pitches where her ideas gleamed, but her skin dimmed the room. Love had armored her against such echoes, Jamal's early adoration a shield. You're my revolution, he'd breathe, but tonight he'd forge the blade himself, twisting it with racial barbs that severed deeper than divorce ever could. Grief surged tidal, hot and unrelenting, her fists clenching in lap as tears streamed unchecked, smudging eyeliner to war paint. The driver averted eyes, radio murmuring low jazz, a cruel echo of the rooftops' dirge, while Zuri curled inward, hazel gaze lost to the rain's relentless blur. Free, she'd declared, the word a talisman against the void. But freedom tasted of ash, the empire she'd veiled now a hollow throne. Home loomed too soon, the high-rise's facade a mocking sentinel under sodium lamps, windows dark as her descent. Zuri paid with trembling hands, fumbling bills like fragile code, and staggered to the lobby elevator alone. Jamal's absence a fresh wound, his pleas left echoing in mist. Upward, floors ticking like a countdown to isolation, she peeled off the ruined gown in the foyer, chiffon pooling at feet like shed skin, leaving her in lace and vulnerability. The bathroom's marble chilled her bare soles as she twisted the shower to scald, steam billowing thick as regret, water cascading over bowed head in punishing torrent. She sank to tiles, knees drawn tight, sobs melding with spray. Raw, animal keens for the man she'd been, the love she'd buried under benevolence. Why hide? The question burned, self-lacerating. For his pride, yes, but also her fear of imbalance, of resentment, of the world seeing her power and recoiling as it did her skin. Suds swirled drainward, carrying salt and sorrow, until skin pruned raw, the heat leaching fury's edge to weary ache. Wrapped in terror vast as a shroud, Zuri collapsed onto the bed, sheets cool against fevered flesh, staring at the ceiling's fan blades whirring like futile prayers. Sleep evaded, the clock's glow mocking, 1 a.m., 2. Each tick a hammer on her heart. At 2:30, resolve clawed through exhaustion, a digital lifeline amid the analog ruin. Phone in hand, fingers steadying on glass, Zuri dialed her attorney, Elena Vasquez, the woman's voice groggy but sharpening to steel. Zuri, midnight crisis? No preamble. Elena knew her client's silences as code for catastrophe. Divorce papers. Now, the words escaped clipped, each a severing, Zuri's voice cracking only once as she outlined the split. House to her, the Lakeview perch bought with apex shadows. SUV to him, a parting gift of mobility in his fall. Prenup ironclad, assets segregated, her empire untouched, his illusions stripped bare. Elena's questions probe gentle. Irreconcilable? Grounds for emotional duress? Zuri's laugh bitter, tears fresh. Try public evisceration, racial slander before 50 witnesses. Details spilled then, rooftop raw and recount, Jamal's slur, Hayes' revelation, the ring's defiant flight. Elena hummed assent, laptop keys clacking distant. Filed by dawn, restraining if he pushes. You're the fortress, Zuri. Don't forget. The call ended on that anchor, Elena's sleep if you can, a futile wish. Zuri curled fetal, phone clutched talisman, the dark pressing like judgment's weight. Dawn crept gray, finding her unrested, eyes swollen but gaze hardening. Grief's forge yielding not defeat, but diamond resolve. Morning light slanted harsh through blinds, gilding the disarray. Gown crumpled, ring absent. The apartment a tomb of tangled vows. Zuri rose mechanical, brewing coffee black as resolve, its steam a veil for the storm brewing within. Her phone, silenced through night, erupted on reactivation, notifications avalanche, the rooftops echo rippling digital, texts from unknowns, colleagues' mortified apologies. Heard what happened, Zuri. Unforgivable. Mark's direct. You're a legend. He doesn't deserve the air. School gossip forums buzzed, screenshots flooding her feed. Jamal's meltdown, racist rant tank's career? Whispers amplified to roar, the white faculty's facade cracking, group chats ablaze with too far, HR incoming, isolation descending on him like frost. Hayes called first, voice grave over speaker. Zuri, ma'am, last night's regrettable. Department's in flux, his position's under review. Cultural toxicity won't stand. Relief flickered, cold and clinical, her thank you measured. But beneath pulsed vindication's bitter bloom, not joy, but justice's hollow echo, the man she'd elevated now plummeting through her unseen scaffolding. Jamal's arrival shattered the fragile peace, key scraping lock like nails on chalkboard, the door banging wide to reveal him, disheveled, eyes red-rimmed, suit rumpled from rooftop vigil. He froze at threshold, taking her in, robed, unadorned, a ghost in her own hall, his face crumpling to supplication. Zuri! The word broke, knees buckling as he crossed to her, collapsing before the couch in genuflect, hands clasping hers in desperate vice. God, babe, I was drunk, lost in the moment. The words, they weren't me. Please, forgive. I love you. Always have. Sobs wrenched from him, guttural and unfeigned, face bearing in her lap like a child seeking absolution. Zuri stiffened, his touch igniting revulsion laced with residual ache. The man who'd held her through code crashes, now reduced to wreckage at her feet. She withdrew slow, hazel eyes distant as Arctic seas. Love, you called me useless, Jamal. Weaponized my blackness for laughs, erased my world for your ego. That's not slip, it's soul. He surged up, grasping arms, voice fracturing. I didn't know. The money, the power. If I'd seen, I'd have worshipped you, not desperation clawed his features, blue eyes pleading mirrors to his unraveling. Zuri recoiled, standing tall, robe falling open like shed armor. Worship? Based on wealth? That's the poison, Jamal. You should have cherished the woman, not the ledger. I hid for us, to let you shine without shadow, but you dimmed me to dust. His wails redoubled, body folding as if lashed. But she turned away, throat tight with unshed fury. Go. Papers come soon. We're ghosts now. He lingered, a specter in the hall, but left broken doors click a final sever. The afternoon blurred in isolation's grip. Zuri pacing rooms haunted by echoes, fingers flying to apex accounts, severing joint threads with surgical precision. Transfers halted, funds rerouted to fortified vaults, her empire sealed against his fallout. LinkedIn beckoned then, a public gauntlet, post drafted in tremor, photo of her in command, straight hair crowned, hazel fierce, caption unapologetic, Apex Innovations, empowering futures, one code at a time, grateful for the bridges we've built and the ones yet to burn. Upload triggered, notifications surged, likes from devs, shares from allies. A workshop invite for 10 young Black coders materializing in inbox. Virtual sessions on equity algorithms, her voice the beacon she'd long muffled. Mentorship's pull anchored her, a lifeline through the maelstrom, voices eager over Zoom. Ms. Ellis, your module changed my trajectory. Teach us? Their fire mirrored her youth's, kindling embers to blaze. The session's end leaving her drained but defiant, tears of reclamation silent on cheeks. Dusk fell velvet, the lake a mirror to her turmoil, Zuri retreating to the balcony, robe traded for silk pajamas, straight hair unbound in wind's caress. She leaned railward, city lights winking like conspirators, the air crisp with autumn's bite, carrying faint brine and regret. Solitude wrapped her, not suffocating now but sacred, the grief's tide ebbing to reflective pools. Love's autopsy, yielding lessons etched in scar, never dim for another's glare, power, not apology. A sob escaped, soft and solitary, hands gripping iron as if to wring answers from void. What now? The question lingered, raw and resonant, until phone vibrated. Unknown number, message blooming. Zuri, it's Marcus from the EdTech Conf years back. Word travels fast, heard the rooftop storm. Coffee? No pity, just admiration. Your code's poetry I've long envied. Tomorrow? Blonde poet with golden locks, his verse once recited shy at panels, eyes tracing her work with wonder untainted. Zuri's lips curved, tentative then true, a smile cracking grief's crust, hazel eyes lifting to stars piercing clouds. Fingers hovered, then typed, agreed, noon, the bean. Send. The wind sighed approval, carrying her toward unknown shores, the balcony's chill yielding to inner warmth. Not healed, but healing, the storm's recoil forging path from ashes, one defiant step illuminated. The balcony's chill had seeped into Zuri's bones that night, but Marcus's message lingered like a hesitant dawn, warming the edges of her resolve. She slipped inside, the apartment's hush now a sanctuary rather than a sepulcher, and collapsed into bed, silk pajamas tangling as sleep finally claimed her. Fitful dreams of code unraveling into wings, Jamal's face dissolving to mist. Morning arrived ungentle, sunlight slicing through curtains like judgment's edge, but Zuri rose with the deliberate grace of one reborn, hazel eyes reflecting a spark undimmed. Coffee brewed, black and bracing, as she scanned Elena's update. Papers served, Jamal's signature scrawled in haste, the split etched clean, no alimony pleas, just the house's deed reaffirmed, the SUV's keys mailed in silent concession. Freedom's ink dried bitter, but it bound her wounds, each clause a scar turned talisman. Days blurred into a deliberate rhythm, Zuri immersing in Apex's forge to outrun the echo of rooftop shards. Her office, once a shadowed annex, became command central. Monitors tripled, walls pinned with flowcharts of Apex 2.0, the upgrade's blueprint a phoenix from her grief's ashes. Tools not just adaptive, but anticipatory, weaving cultural narratives into learning webs to uplift voices like hers. Long marginalized. Developers dialed in via encrypted links, their voices a chorus of fervor. Boss, the bias flagging's at 98%. It's poetry. And Zuri's commands flowed sharp, her laughter genuine amid late-night sprints. The thrill of creation a salve on soul's raw edges. But solitude struck in lulls, the king-sized bed vast as accusation, nights where she'd trace the empty pillow, grief surging unbidden. Not for the man, but the illusion, the partnership she'd conjured from compromise. Therapy beckoned then, sessions with Dr. Lang, a black woman with locks like wisdom's crown, unpacking the trauma in measured breaths. You armored for love, Zuri, Lang would say, voice steady as roots. But armor becomes cage. What does unveiling feel like? Tears came freer in that space, confessions spilling, the hiding, the hoping, the hollowing. Like shedding skin, Zuri whispered once, voice cracking, raw but ready to breathe. 3 months carved the calendar, autumn's blaze yielding to winter's hush, the divorce sealing in a sterile courtroom downtown. Jamal across the aisle, gaunt and hollow-eyed, his signature a tremor on parchment, losing 20% of joint scraps to her unyielding fortress. He met her gaze once, blue depths pleading forgiveness unspoken, but Zuri looked through, hazel unyielding as glacial ice. Take care, she'd murmured post-hearing, words neutral as code, before striding out into flurrying snow, the cold a crisp baptism. Word from Hayes trickled later. Demotion swift, Jamal relegated to adjunct in a rural outpost 200 miles south, whispers chasing him like specters, faculty sidelining his calls, parents pulling kids from his roster, the rooftop racist label a brand he couldn't scrub. Isolation suited his unraveling, nights solitary with bottle and regret, voicemails to old buds met with silence. His empire of ego crumbled to dust. Zuri, conversely, ascended. Apex 2.0 launched mid-blizzard, a virtual gala streamed to thousands, her keynote ablaze, straight hair pinned regal, pantsuit charcoal sharp as her diction. From shadows to scaffolds, she proclaimed, voice resonant over pixels, hazel eyes piercing the lens. We code not just tools, but truths, lifting black and brown futures from the margins. Downloads spiked, revenue cresting 10 million overnight. Partnerships flooding inbox from coast to capitals. The validation surged electric, not ego's bomb but purpose's pulse, her chest expanding with each testimonial. A teen coder from Bronzeville, voice cracking over video. Your app saw me, Miss Ellis, now I see myself. Tears pricked then, private and profound, the rooftop's abyss transmuted to this, legacy, luminous, and hers alone. Marcus entered softly, a counterpoint to Storm's fury. Their coffee at the bean unfolded under Millennium Park's skeletal oaks, snow dusting his golden locks like errant verse, his poet's eyes, sea green, unguarded, tracing her with reverence unforced. I followed Apex from afar, he confessed over lattes steaming in chill, fingers drumming table like iams. Your code's not lines, it's lyric, rhythms that rewrite worlds. No pity shadowed his words, only admiration pure as fresh print, his laugh a melody when she quipped about debugged demons haunting her sleep. They walked then, boots crunching virgin white, conversation weaving effortless, his chapbook on urban myths, her algorithms mirroring folklore's twists. Touch came tentative, a gloved hand brushing hers at a crosswalk, sparking warmth she'd forgotten possible. Dates followed, unhurried blooms, poetry slams in Wicker Park, where his verses lauded her hazel hurricanes, drawing blushes beneath her skin. Quiet dinners overlooking the frozen lake, his stories of verse-forged scars echoing her own, forging bonds without the weight of veils. Marcus saw her, unapologetic, unadorned, his touch reverent, kisses slow as sonnets, bodies entwining in her bed with equality's ease. No pedestals, just planes aligning. You're the revolution, he'd murmur post-climax, breath hot on her neck, echoing Jamal's ghost but purified, her laughter free as she traced his jaw. We both are. Yet shadows lingered, therapy's mirror unflinching. Sessions deepened, Lang guiding flashbacks grip. The rooftops slur replaying in dreams, Jamal's face morphing to faceless foes, racial barbs from pitches past. Feel it, Lang urged, voice anchor in the gale. Don't flee. Name the rage, the grief. Zuri did, voice fracturing in the office's safe hush. He made me small to feel tall, my blackness, his prop, my power, his punchline. Catharsis crested in waves, sobs heaving until exhaustion claimed, emerging wrung but lighter. The mantra evolving, no more eclipse, I am the sun. Vulnerability bloomed then, shared with Marcus over wine one eve, his hands steady on hers, listening without fix. His, you're unbreakable, Zuri, forged, not felled, a balm that stuck, intimacy deepening to trust's tender core. Winter waned to spring's tease, the charity gala cresting as a pinnacle. A glittering affair at the Field Museum, T-Rex bones looming like ancient sentinels over tuxes and gowns. Zuri arrived solo, the pink chiffon retired, but its echo in scarlet silk. Sleeveless, fierce, straight hair loose in ebony waves framing hazel fire. Marcus waited at entry, golden mane tamed, suit midnight blue, his smile a beacon parting the crowd. Stunning, he breathed, arm offered, their entrance a quiet command, heads turning, whispers of the apex queen, rippling like acclaim. Tables groaned under auctions, apex laptops for underfunded labs, signed code prints fetching bids in thousands. Zuri's moment came post-dinner, stage lights bathing her in gold, microphone cool in palm as 500 souls hushed. Donors, devs, dreamers, faces a mosaic of hope. She stepped forward, scarlet whispering, voice steady as compiled truth. From useless to unbreakable, she began, the rooftop's ghost invoked not as wound, but weapon, hazel eyes sweeping the hall. They called me Shadow, black, brilliant, but buried for love's lie. Tonight I stand unveiled. For every girl coded out, every voice dimmed, Apex builds bridges unbreakable. Stories wove then, her modules save of a Southside prodigy, scholarships seeding 10 coders' futures, laughter mingling with gas, tears glistening in front rows. Marcus watched from table's edge, pride etching his features, his applause thunderous at close. Backstage, he pulled her close amid chaos, kiss fierce and claiming, "You burn them alive." The night crowned her, vignette as Black Entrepreneur Supreme, plaque heavy in hands, flashbulbs popping like stars birthing. In afterglow, en route home through budding streets, Zuri leaned into Marcus, head on his shoulder, the city's pulse syncing with hers. Therapy's work echoed, no hiding now, her light a beacon unapologetic, the Gela's roar a symphony of self-reclaimed. Shadows fled, replaced by dawn's promise. Love not ledgered, but luminous. Power not pawned, but proclaimed. As they crossed threshold, his verse whispered against her skin. Zuri felt the rebirth complete, not survivor, but sovereign, flames rekindled eternal. Spring's tentative thaw had deepened to summer's full embrace. By the time Zuri stood at her office window, the Chicago skyline a glittering testament to reinvention. Lake Michigan's expanse a serene counterpoint to the empire she'd unapologetically claimed. Months had woven the Gela's threads into tapestry. Awards mounted on walls once bare. Apex's valuations soaring past horizons she'd once coded in whispers. Her days a symphony of board calls and breakthrough briefs. Yet in quiet interludes like this golden hour with sun slanting low, Zuri's fingers drifted to the journal on her desk, its leather spine worn from nightly confessions, pages a cartography of scars turned stars. She flipped to the beginning, ink faded but fierce. He called me useless. Tonight I call myself unbreakable. The words anchored her, a relic from the abyss, now prelude to ascension. Therapy's mirror had polished them, Lang's voice echoing in memory. Redemption isn't erasure, Zuri, it's reclamation. And reclaim she had, the rooftop's venom alchemized to venom's antidote, her blackness not burden, but blaze. The journal closed with a soft snap, Zuri's hazel eyes lifting to the horizon where water met infinite blue, a horizon she'd crossed in solitude's forge. Apex thrived not in isolation now, but constellation. Her book, Hidden Code, a black woman's blueprint for unyielding power, had launched to acclaim, 50,000 copies vanishing from shelves like secrets unchained. Each chapter a manifesto drawn from marrow. The hiding's cost, the revelation's rush, strategies for sisters sidelined in text coliseum. Fan letters flooded, voices echoing her own youth's hunger. Your words coded my escape, Miss Ellis. And Zuri's foundation burgeoned, funneling 1,000 black women towards startups, grants blooming like urban gardens from her seed. One lingered vivid, a coder from Inglewood, eyes wide at their virtual meet. You showed me my skin's syntax, not syntax error. Zuri's chest had tightened then, tears veiled behind smile. The cycle broken, not just survived, but shattered, her light a lantern for legions. Jamal's shadow crossed her path once more, a letter arriving unbidden on a Tuesday eve. Envelope crisp as contrition, postmarked from his rural exile. She slid it open at the kitchen island, wine glass sweating condensation, the words spilling in his familiar scrawl. Zuri, words fail, as they did that night. I was the void, you the sun I eclipsed for fear of my own dark. The demotion, the isolation, deserved lashes for my blindness. Your rise, aw's only echo. I learned too late. Love honors, doesn't hoard. Forgive not for me, but your peace. Always your ghost, Jamal. The page trembled in her grip, ink blurring under a single tear. Not sorrows, but sorrow's surrender. Grief's final gasp, the man she'd loved reduced to echo, his remorse a mirror to her mercy. Zuri folded it deliberate, tucking into the journal's back, a bookmark, not barb, then fired her reply via email, cursor steady. Learned late, but learned. Forgiveness granted, from afar. Build better shadows, Jamal. Shine on, send. Closure clicked like compiled code, the weight lifting ethereal, her heart unburdened, free to orbit new suns. Marcus became that orbit, their bond a verse etched in shared silences and stolen dawns. No veils between. Summer found them wandering Europe's cobbled veins. Paris first, Seine's murmur sinking with his recited lines under Eiffel glow. Then Rome's ruins where he'd penned sonnets to her hazel tempests, golden locks tousled by forum winds. In a Tuscan vineyard at dusk, grapes heavy as secrets, he'd dropped to knee, not proposal, but pledge, pulling a slim volume from satchel, leather-bound verses titled Zuri's Cipher. Not rings, he'd murmured, sea-green eyes holding hers, but rhythms for the woman who debugged my world. Pages turned to odes, her pink gown's defiant silk, the rooftops thunder in mahogany, love's lines weaving equity with ecstasy. Zuri's laughter bubbled free, fingers tracing his jaw as she read aloud, voice thick with wonder. The intimacy profound, his adoration not pedestal but partnership, bodies and dreams aligning equal. Nights in linen sheets overlooking Arno's flow, his touch mapped her scars with reverence. Whispers of, you're the code I crave, dissolving old ghosts to stardust. No hiding, she shone, he amplified. Equality's easy grace, love as ally, not anchor. Back in Chicago's humid haze, the conference loomed as capstone. A TEDx stage in McCormick Place, spotlights hot as judgment's gaze. 500 souls, a sea of expectant faces. Devs in hoodies, execs in power wool, sisters with eyes like hers, hungry for heresy. Zuri ascended steps in emerald silk, sleeveless, sovereign, straight hair, a glossy veil framing resolve. Microphone humming alive in palm, heart thundering, not fear but fire. The hall hushed, breaths collective inhale, her voice emerging resonant, a blade sheathed in velvet. They named me useless, a black woman in shadows, coded invisible for love's fragile throne. But shadows forged stars. I rose, not risen upon, but radiant from within. Stories cascaded then. Rooftops, raw evisceration, Hayes's thunderclap, the ring's defiant arc, laughter punctuating pain, gasps greeting her empire's unveil. Power isn't permission, she proclaimed, Hazel locking on distant kin. It's presumption. Claim your cipher, sisters. Dauntless, we debug the dark. Applause erupted cataclysmic, standing ovation, a wave crashing shores, Marcus in front row, beaming pride's pure light, his whoop cutting through like verse triumphant. Off stage, amid throngs crush, hugs from strangers turned saviors, cards pressed fervent, Zuri caught her breath in Wing's alcove, Emerald whispering against walls etched with icons. Marcus found her there, arms enveloping from behind, chin on shoulder, his "You slayed galaxies" murmured hot in ear. She turned, lips meeting his in fierce claim, the kiss a coda to conquest, tongues tracing triumphs, hands mapping futures uncharted. "We did," she breathed, pulling back to search his green depths, the bond unbreakable. Poet and programmer, equals in Empire's weave. The conference bled to after-parties, but they slipped away early, taxi weaving night streets to her perch, where skyline bowed in deference. On the balcony, wine shared under stars, Zuri leaned railward, wind teasing straight strands, Marcus's arm a steady arc. "No more small," she vowed, voice soft thunder. "For anyone. Values vain, not validation. My blackness, my brilliance, chains no more but crown." He nodded, fingers interlacing hers, his verse low. "Crown of ciphers eternal, your light, my north." Dawn crept then, gilding lake to gold, Zuri's gaze sweeping the expanse. Not loss's echo, but legacy's loom. Book signing cues, coder cohorts thriving, a world rewritten in her image. Jamal's letter, therapy's truths, Marcus's muse, all threads in tapestry vast, her sovereignty woven eternal. No apologies lingered, only assent, the phoenix not fledged but flourishing, wings spanning horizons unchained. As conference echoes faded, Zuri stood on that stage anew in mind's eye. Hair-baying breeze, Hazel direct as decree. Shine unyielding, dark yields to your dawn. The world hungers for your blaze. Fade to credit's hush. Inspiration's ink, her story. Not ended, but ever unfolding, a cipher for the bold. And that's Zuri's fire, rising from shadows to blaze unbreakable. What would you do in her shoes? Drop your thoughts below. Let's spark a conversation. Thanks for riding this storm with me. Your energy fuels the tales. Catch you next time. Stay fierce, stay shining,